Hey everyone, it's Allie with Colors of Hope Crafts ASMR. I hope you're all doing well, and today I am going to be sharing with you some of my favorite ways of using up some of that scrap yarn that you have from various projects. This comes up quite a lot in different knitting and crochet groups that I'm in. And so I want to help you answer that question. But first of all, let's answer the question, what is scrap yarn? So scrap yarn is yarn that is left over from doing another knitting or crocheting project. It could be a lot left over from doing a small project, or it could be just like foot of yarn. It just depends on the project and how much yarn is left over. But there are ways to use up that 12 inches of yarn, and as well as ways to use up a partial or almost full skein of yarn. One option you have is to make a granny square. So granny squares are squares that can be used to make into a blanket or a pot holder, or I've even seen people make them into sweaters, or this pillow, it has some leftover yarn, so I'll be figuring out what to do with that. I may make some more granny squares and make them into a blanket, or I might make them into a basket. One thing that is fun about scrap projects is that you can end up incorporating a lot of different color into it. This is the pillow that I made for my grandma, and she got to enjoy it for about 4 weeks before she passed away a couple months ago. I did make a video where I was working on this, so I will leave that up there, or so you can see how I made this pillow. There are a lot of different patterns for granny squares, and what's really nice about granny squares is you can mix and match them and make them into a really cool and fun blanket. I one time made a blanket for my brother that had all different types of granny squares on it, and that was a lot of fun. I got to use up lots of different yarn, and in many ways it turned out kind of like an art project almost. So I talked to you about granny squares. There's another option for you is to make hats. Hats don't take up a whole lot of yarn, particularly if they are for young children or babies. And I think I read that the University of Iowa needs somewhere around 1,500 hats for infants. You can also reach out to organizations that assist cancer patients, and they might be interested in taking handmade hats. That's another option for you for those scraps is to make baskets. I personally really like that one. I used a bunch of my scrap yarn to make a giant basket that's about this big around. And wouldn't you know, I use it to hold yarn. My personal favorite way to use up scrap yarn, though, is to make a scrap yarn shawl. I made this one and several years ago, and it has some of the first yarn that I spun in it. And there are several rows of different yarns that were scraps, and then it just continues as going down. And this shawl was inspired by leaves and trees that I saw in the backyard at my in-laws' house. So this is an example of a scrap yarn shawl that has both small amounts of yarn and larger amounts of scrap yarn. I actually have one that I'm working on right now. That I started, and that one has both scrap yarn in it and yarn that I got from the Fiber Festival this past weekend. So I have some leftover yarn from this blanket. I have some of this yarn and some of this yarn. And so I'm going to be incorporating these two colors into a shawl using this yarn. This is what I have so far. And one thing that I really enjoy doing is just making up patterns as I go. It gives me a lot of creativity, or a lot of room for creativity, and freehand knitting can sometimes be a lot more fun than knitting, and without than just knitting with a pattern. So if you've never done that, I do recommend you give it a try sometime. So those are my favorite ways of using up some of that extra yarn. I hope you found it amusing and helpful for you. And if you like the video, please like it, hit subscribe, leave a comment. And if you have any other ideas for things you can make with that scrap yarn, please leave a comment below, so people can get ideas for using up their scrap yarn. Take care, and I will see you again soon. Bye!